Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Nantucket Historical Commission, February 17th, 2023 meeting. Welcome, everyone. Let me get the people who are in the trailer. Nikki?
I'm here.
Georgia?
Here.
Abby?
Here.
Holly?
Present.
Thank you. Tom?
Here.
And I as well. So let's go ahead and begin our meeting. Do we have anyone from the public to offer comments? I didn't see anyone.
I thought Rita was on. Is she on? But I don't know if she has, not putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm here, no comments.
Hi, Rita.
Hello.
Hi, Rita, welcome. All right then, well, let's jump right into the surveying and resources. Holly, would you like to start with that?
So you all saw in the packet, first of all, I guess we'll look at here, we're at this island-wide survey plan. So you all saw in the packet the latest and greatest version of it. This is after our comments, MHC's comments, as well as giving us the final, here it is, here's review. So I had a couple of little tweaks that I saw that I sent to Jenny. Angus was copied on it. And she's gonna fix those. And we were basically waiting for Michael and Peter, who is at MHC, the deputy SHPO and the preservation planner there. Make sure they were okay with it. And then if they say it's good to go, it's gonna go on the town's website and you will get a digital copy from me on it. So very excited. And speaking of that, you all, I sent you a notice to say that we have our preservation planning page. So very excited. If there's things that the commission wants to put on there, we'll be able to do that. So we're at the final stretch of having the formal document.
Holly,
It's-
if I may interrupt, I know I've looked this thing over before, but today, or last night, looking it over, I see a couple of things that I'd like to mention. Thank you for having them to say more about the Old North Vestry. That's not what I was going to say. In looking at page 100, it's listed under Roman numeral 4, Federal and Classic Periods 1791 to 1860, Nantucket Town Residential Architecture. In the Nantucket Survey Plan on D18, it doesn't list 27 and 29 North Liberty Street, which are very historic places, both built in 1798. 29 was the residence of Seth Ray.
Yep.
And 27 was the cooperage that Seth Ray built. He was a whale oil cooper builder, barrel builder.
What page was it again?
100.
It's page 100 on their historic plan D18.
I think you can put the page number in right there.
Well, it's listed as page 18 on what you're doing right there.
Yeah, so you do.
Oh, yeah, sorry, page 100. I'm sorry, it's a D18 down in the lower right-hand column. But you're getting there. You keep going backwards, you get there.
So those are the photos. I'm confused.
Those are photos. It's way before that.
Oh,
You got to go
Yeah.
up. You got to go up.
So what section are you talking about within?
I'm talking about, it's labeled under Roman numeral 4, Federal and Classic Period, 1791 to 1860.
This is what it looks like, and that's what you're looking for.
Oh, okay. So here's my thing on that, and thank you for bringing that up. So that section that we were looking at, let me get to it. is right out of our NHL update. So it's nothing that PAL has created, and that was what Brian Pfeiffer and his colleague who worked on the NHL update did. You
Well,
all
they
can
didn't-
see. what I'm
They didn't
scrolling.
do it well enough because 27 and 29 certainly belong in that listing.
So
Okay.
you're, oh, okay, he said D
So,
18.
yeah.
So keep
Go
going.
down.
Right there, right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is I don't know how they've done this, but in the photos that you were showing, photo number 22, it says Old North Cemetery and Vestal. I don't believe that's the Old North Cemetery. I believe that's the Quaker Cemetery. It may be just mislabeled. Because to me, the Old North Cemetery is on the left and the New North Cemetery is on the right of New Lane, part of the Gardner Cemetery.
All right, so those
And
are,
that's on their survey page E11.
you know,
Keep scrolling.
pages.
Where this is
I
E6.
would back up. I think it's way at the beginning.
Yeah. So this was and thank you for bringing up the photos. This was
Just had it. Keep going.
these were something that the MHC wanted. That was one of their feedbacks was, where's the pictures? So, this is what they've provided. It's really, I think how can you describe Nantucket, all of Nantucket in photographs, and you can only have so many photographs? So that's what they did, but you're talking
So,
about this
this
one right
one.
here.
Keep going. Right there.
Yeah, this one, yeah,
Yeah,
it is the Quaker, so good catch on that.
so that's page 101. So I was telling you the other comment he had was 84, just so if you need to.
Page
I
one.
didn't see a page number. It just had the,
Yep. So that is old, that's the Quaker.
Yeah.
All right, I will
That's
have
all.
them change.
Thank you.
No,
Sorry.
thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. But to your point on the first item, that entire list of basically representative of our NHL, that came directly out of the NHL update. So I wouldn't want to change it because then there's going to be there's going to be a disconnect between the two. But it would be good to note as far as the survey plan itself, that when we get to that area of Wesco Acre lots in the Lily Street side, that particular property is used as a individually significant structure. What address was that again?
Said 27.
27
and
north?
29 North Liberty
Yep.
Street.
South Ray.
Mhm.
Yeah. Know all about that one. Okay. For future, yeah, that's the only thing on that. Cool. Thank you.
So I've got a question about the list. That Pal will be looking at the next upcoming list.
Okay, I don't know if are we good on the survey plan, Mr. Chair?
I'm just so excited to get it up to a place where people can find it, and certainly on our site. But any others, I think as many places that it can be available, the better. But thank you for that catch, Tom. There, a document of this size, there are bound to be things. So thank you for getting that. Is there anything else that you want to say about it, Holly?
I have a question.
Sure.
When we do officially put it on the website, is that some sort of announcement or anything we could do just so
Yep.
people know?
So I'll be asking Florencia, our public outreach
Okay.
coordinator, to do like a news flash.
Okay.
Plus, it will also be in the town manager's monthly
Monthly
newsletter that she does. And that's another thing too. If this commission, HDC, anything preservation related from the town's perspective that we want to get out, I'm always asked. Florencia is always sending me, hey, you got anything for the newsletter? So that's just something for you all to think about if there's something that we want. Like, for instance, Wisconsin Trust doing what they've done recently. And I've on another topic, but this ties into our survey plan.
Mhm.
The work that they've done, hiring Michael May and, every single, thanks to Clement and everybody at Sconset Trust, Betsy Grubbs, this has been available to every single commissioner. My understanding, I'll speak for Clement, but I think you all are gonna get a copy of this as well. Yes, they had an underwriter, and so I was able to provide that to the HCC, but I asked if we can get a digital copy of it as well and have that on the town's website, near your building with Nantucket in mind,
Yeah.
get it out there. There'll also be on a link from our preservation planning page, and we'll also have a news flash at some point too. So
Okay.
yes, there's definitely ways, and whenever we do a news flash from the town, my understanding is it's also on our social media,
Mhm.
so it's awesome.
Holly, will there be like a formal presentation of this to the HDC or any other town bodies that we need to be aware of?
Wasn't planning on it. I've been giving the HDC updates and letting them know. For instance, when the completion of the fish lots and they've been able to utilize those surveys, I've been able to say, hey, but I have stopped and said at the beginning of public comment to let the commission know that this is where we are with our surveying work. I wasn't necessarily planning on doing anything else like that. Plus, everybody saw the presentations in December, so.
Great. Okay. Let's move on.
Right. All right, so the current work, I was trying to follow what you got here. So the fish lots one, so just to kind of go in from the survey to the Form Bs that were done in the one Form A. So those MHC, last time I talked to Michael Steinitz, Deputy Shippo, on where those stood. I guess it takes a little bit longer for them to process them and upload them onto their macros, onto the database. But once it's done, then there'll be a link on our GIS page. The MHC inventory now that's there. So I keep on telling people we're gonna see more of the triangles, which is gonna be awesome. So that they're supposed to let me know when that's gonna be finalized, but they have them all. They've already commented. Pal has already provided any edits that they had, that we provided, that they provided. So my understanding is that those are final. So I guess we'll go into the new project. So with us starting with PAL on the next fiscal year, so this is fiscal year 22 project for finishing up the fish lots and going into Grant Point. They are planning to be on Nantucket for their field work in March. And what I was been told this week, as last week and this week, and I confirmed, it's the week of the 20th. Which would be awesome. They obviously did a lot of their site visit already for fish lots, so they don't need to go back to fish lots. This is going to be predominantly looking at Grant Point. And of course, I'm hopeful NPT will have some time for them to talk to them again. And thank you, NPT, for the information you've been providing to them already. But yeah, they're going to be doing a lot of that field work on March 20th. So as of last time, I don't know if you all were familiar on that, there will be a public notice that will go out as a courtesy. There'll be a letter that I will provide. So that way, once the folks are here doing their survey work, they can, if anybody got any questions, they can hand it to them, say, hey, you got any questions, you can contact town. But also there'll be a notice with the news flash and probably in the newsletter as well to say, hey, this is what they're doing. And I've been trying to make sure that it's something that people realize it's ongoing. So that way, if they do see people with cameras or taking pictures of their houses, they're not freaking out about it. So we want to move into the list, I guess, and you can.
I'll just say one thing that is really exciting about this. Polly mentioned the MHC training I went to in, I think it was December.
Yep.
It's really interesting because a lot of people haven't necessarily, they're like about to redo their survey. So it was just interesting to be like, oh, and I was able to give a little context about what we're doing. So also important for us to remember we can be a resource for other towns within the Commonwealth, because I think New Bedford was saying that they're about to start and some of the other places.
And on the flip side too, there are other communities within the Commonwealth that, so when I went to the first, I guess, virtual meeting since we got our first grant, and it was going around the Zoom with the state and saying, you know, okay, what this historical commission is doing, that historical commission is doing, and just hearing that there were other commissions in the Commonwealth that have applied for this funding consecutive years, and that this was just an ongoing of their survey plan. I think we will be probably the longest along because of just how large we are.
We have so much to still.
Right, so, which is pretty, but it's pretty cool to hear because, you know, I think people don't really realize when they look at an HTC survey, the old surveys, they're supposed to be updated every 5 years, technically. And so that's something that, you know, is really, I think, lost when people go to the Plus building and, or go online and go, oh, look at this survey from '89. I'm like, yeah, completely out to date. So to be able to get that into people's heads that, you know, yeah, definitely.
Holly, what was your sense from the others who have sought the grants for doing the survey work? Have they consistently been able to sort of re-up as they are doing those projects, or were there very many that had extensive projects like ours where it might be, you know, 10 years in our case, but with others, you know, 2, 3, 4 years? Were most of them met and able to continue with their work?
It seemed like it. I didn't hear anybody, you know, complaining about not being able to complete what they wanted, you know, what the historical commission wanted to do.
Right.
Because it's not just, you got to remember, it's not just for surveying, it's also planning. So people do preservation plans for certain, and you can do that, you know, again, you can go from the overall island, which essentially is that's what our survey plan is. It's a form of a preservation plan, but down to a singular structure or use. So that's just something, you know, to think about, that the broad range of it, but mostly it is to update the surveys. So,
Most other communities have really small
yes,
historic
Yeah.
districts, so
Correct.
their survey plans are much smaller, I would imagine.
the state,
I would imagine we must have one of the biggest.
we pretty much are.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from our conversations with the state, they're happy that Nantucket is doing this.
Mhm.
Quite, I mean, they seem to be very, you know, engaged, that we are engaged in wanting to move forward with our survey work, which is good to hear. So,
When you look at the page that's up right now, it says Easton and Hobart along the water. It's interesting because there's probably 7 or 8 that are either up in the air, no longer there, or have been
Yes.
moved to a different location. And that's in the last 2 months.
yep.
So that kind of brings up my question about the list, is how many of these do you know are in the, you know, we have 145 available to do, is that right?
Mhm.
And how many are in the fish lots that are gonna start? We'll start with those, I imagine.
98,
So we got essentially 47 on Brant Point that we can do.
correct. Yep.
And so to Tom's point, so many of the houses along Easton and Holbert have already been like gutted and redone, and there's very little left of so many of those buildings
Mhm.
that I want to be careful that we're not concentrating a lot of our effort and expense on buildings that are kind of almost all already done, you know, almost too late to sort of say.
Exactly.
There's a lot of, you know, on Walsh and the cross streets and Willard. And Angus and I were just down there yesterday, kind of looking at this form, the list, and trying to assess which ones have already been totally rebuilt and maybe aren't a high priority relative to some that are
Okay.
fairly still intact. So on your current list, obviously there's more than 47 in the Brant Point area.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we can be a little bit more specific rather than just saying we'll do the ones on Easton Street and Hobart along the waterfront.
So this is kind of where I was going with this that I sent you all yesterday. Because to your point, yes, it, you know, it kind of narrows it down because this grant was to finish the fish lots and then go to Brant Point. And we knew that it was just going to start Brant Point, not necessarily do a big component of it.
Mhm.
And I would hope that the commission agrees that finishing the fish lots is important. Because it's essentially our survey plan outlines that anything that's contributing specifically in our old historic district should be a high priority.
Yep.
On the flip side, you've got Brant Point. Anything that is contributing within our areas of coastal flooding, sea level rise, all that is also a high priority.
Mhm.
I think also it's important to realize where we didn't have any surveys done at all in the fish lots. And thank God for NPT and some of the work that we were able to get, that Betsy Tyler did, Penn did over the years. We were able to provide them with a lot of information, even down to you know, some of the contemporary editions that were done and what have you. There was nothing for them to start on. The fact that we have 89 HDC surveys on file in Macris for the Brant Point area, there's going to be a lot of them. If you, I know you've been in Macris, you can look and see, and they'll indicate whether or not that structure has been demolished. There's a lot of structures that you and I know that have gone or moved,
Mhm.
that and it still says that it's still existing.
Probably, or totally
So-
renovated.
So I know, and I take the point of, do we really want to focus on the outskirts? And I understand, but at the same time, this entire list is what has been provided in the RFP, which it has the benefit of the consultants to go after. They need to be able to update anything that we have in Macris already to say, okay, like for instance, I'll go in here. I wanted to make it, I hope this was clear. Please tell me if it wasn't. But we have the Form As and Form Bs. And these structures, obviously for the White Elephant guest houses, they can handle that with a Form A.
Tell me what a Form A is. We've been talking about Form Bs for a long time.
Yes, Form A is exactly what they used for the Philip Folger row house, because it is an area of it all on its own, the properties together emulate
An area.
an area.
Got it.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to have historic information on it. They
Mhm.
quite do. They were able to, but each unit gets its own Macris number.
Mhm.
So I've been trying to get the Macris numbers as something that people will see within the HDC. For instance, you'll see HDC survey, NAN dot, whatever. And that's what a lot of these, and I apologize, for some reason on our attachment A, when it was printed out in the RFP, it didn't have all the list of the
Right.
Macris numbers.
I see them
I
on the list.
originally had it in the Excel spreadsheet. So my point is that there's going to be some methodology that I think that Angus and I will be talking with Pal on how they foresee updating these surveys. It might be a component of, okay, like for instance, we know these this structure here, the old motel, the conch shell kind of motel,
Mhm.
which
It's just getting
Beinecke
down.
owned at one point. Yes, so this was demolished. But there's an HDC survey on file on that. Again, likewise, these two from the 50s, we know that's where you see a lot of the current construction going on. Botticelli and Pohl is the architect on one, and I think Workshop is APD is the architect. That's the only way I know these things, is by the architect. So these two structures have their own HDC survey on file, so they're gonna have to go in there, and I don't know what that reflects on their end. You know, is that something simple that they can do? Are they gonna, because again, it's all about how many surveys.
So
I don't want that lost.
looking at the one which is 16 Easton Street, which was the old driftwood, the original, huge gambrel driftwood, which we've seen
Yep.
photographs of.
Yep.
Does that become part of the survey record? I mean, if that's left on the list and there's 16 Easton Street and people look that up, will they see pictures of the old?
That's
Driftwood.
kind of my question.
Yeah.
That's why I put on here, update history, because we've known through that whole review process of the original gambrel from the 1880s that was called driftwood.
Yeah.
They demolished that in 53, built the contemporary one in 54,
Yeah.
and then we're back and we've demolished it. But again, there's the only record that's with Macris is the 50s contemporary building and
Yeah.
not the driftwood from the 1880s. So
It would be good to have a chronological
It-
history of the different buildings that have been on there.
exactly. So that's
Is that-
kind of
is that
why.
what you're- Is Driftwood what you're calling Auburn Cottage?
No, Auburn Cottage is up
That's all
here.
right.
Right, so what I'm getting at is, this is a very important conversation we're having right now, because as far as Eastern Street is concerned, I'm not sure, even though we want to do it, now is the right time to do it. I mean, from Auburn Cottage all the way down to the Coast Guard Station is just totally, almost inaccessible for anybody to do anything. Half of them aren't there. Some of them are cut in half. They're in the air. They're under major renovation. And so to try to do what we want to do, I'm not sure is the right thing. But if you go around the, Rotary, maybe down 100 feet or so, and start there, we can do a lot of Hulbert Avenue, if not both sides, because we've listed that as
You know,
important.
No,
it-
I get
it
that.
depends
And-
on
and
what
I-
the,
just to finish my thought, I thought then after that, we could go into some of these streets, Walsh and those, because a lot of what, I don't remember which one it is, whether it's Walsh or what's the other one that's opposite the
Willard.
well, what is it?
Willard.
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 I don't know which one of those goes all the way down. I think it's Willard. But at a certain point on Willard, it's all houses that they're all new, created by Sarvis, and so I don't see if those is that important to spend the money and the time on right now. I think we should concentrate on some of those smaller ones that that have been there for a long time, and as well as the left side of Hulbert Avenue down there. And it's just, there's so
I
much
think
going on there right at the moment. It's difficult to do what we're trying to do here.
you make good points, Tom. From the survey that Mickey and I did, and also just decades of being familiar with the area and being involved in the building trade, you sort of get a sense, I think probably Mickey better than anybody, about what has been completely redone, what has been mostly redone but still exists, and what's been removed. But also the particular threat to the smaller, older houses that new owners want to enlarge to the point where there either is very little or nothing left of the original structure. And I see the logic in getting what's alongside the water if this were like a one-shot deal for surveys. Presumably all the survey work will be done in that area over the next couple of years. But to Tom's point of how much work has happened on Easton Street just in the past few months, it lets us know that the smaller, older buildings are probably more at risk over the next year than the ones necessarily right on the water. So I think that there needs to be a balance of the inland ones that are vulnerable to development with the ones that are alongside the water.
That place that used to be a chicken farm on the left, when you got just past Carrie's house, and there are several buildings that it's a garage now and some other buildings that were all part of that. I think that's a good place to start. That keeps us away from most of the new construction, although another 300 or 400 feet down the street on the same side, there's a big lot there now, and they've just moved 2 houses there and put them in the Craig's old property. It's the Craig's
Yeah.
grandchildren that did that, and so I know that kind of thing is still going on, but once you get past that particular thing, and there's a new one going up on the corner, which we don't have to worry about yet, the rest of it's pretty straight going. Toscana does have another one up on piers that they're going to put a foundation on, just for the coastal resiliency stuff. but that's not that old a house either. And so I think we're safe to go the rest of the way down Hulbert Avenue, but I still want to, investigate a lot of those cottages that are there.
I think a lot of this is gonna be up to Pal's professional, decisions. On the fact that, you all raise really good points and I agree. I just don't want those to be lost. So maybe focusing on and getting away from Easton Street would be a better ideal to wait down the road until that work is completed. And come back and do that later. But maybe focus more on Hulbert and the inland. Is that where you were thinking of?
I think so too. There's still a lot of small, very old cottages, turn of the century, 30s, 40s, in those inland areas that
Right.
haven't really been touched a lot yet. And I think if one of the reasons that we're doing this list is to help preserve and protect a lot of these old cottages, those are the ones that maybe we want to focus on because they're really susceptible to redevelopment.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, if you look at, and I was trying to do a methodology of just along the coast. That was my whole, of trying to synthesize this list. But if you look along Hulbert, there's a good amount of turn of the century, even end of the century, last century. And then, these are all on the water side, but there's some on the inland side that are also, decent ages, haven't been, to your point, haven't
Yeah.
been touched.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if we want to focus more on Hulbert versus Easton, and I'll have this conversation with Ginny and her team on the fact that, yeah, there's a lot that's being done on Easton, and that might be something to do down the road. As far as going inland, does it sound like Walsh and Will? I don't even have them on here, so that'd be another thing. When we put this together for the RFQ.
Well,
RFQ.
remember, we only have 47.
Correct.
But I think listening to you guys, obviously, a lot more. I mean, I've spent time down there, but I think that makes sense because I have spent time on Easton and I know what you're meaning. It's very clogged. It's not easy. And if they're doing a survey, also, we want to make sure that PAL is being as efficient as possible. So when they're doing Easton, let's make it as easy as possible for them to do it. And then to your point, it would be great to, while we have the opportunity and they haven't torn down any of these buildings, to at least get something on the record. Because to your point, it's a shame when we hear about these spaces that it's demolished and once it's gone, you can't get it back. So I do think that makes sense to me. And I'm obviously going to defer to all of you,
I
but
think the one that we ought to just take out of order, specifically for what it is that little house that's way in the back behind the Nantucket Hotel. At the very front, the town end of the bluff there. That's a very old house, and I would like to see that get surveyed.
North Street, probably.
Right, if I forget, it's right there behind Chaos, not Chaos Corner, what's the?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's the road right at the base of Cliff Road. You have to go behind,
Yes.
alongside
Yes,
the
back there,
hotel.
right, very
Oh.
old house.
On that side of Easton.
Yeah, it's kind of not
You
really.
know
in the
where
area.
it is, Holly, you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. I know, but that's actually outside of the Brant Point area of our survey plan.
That's too
Believe
bad.
it or not.
It's a very old one. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I agree.
So, I mean,
Yes.
there are some valuable old ones that are on Easton that haven't been, completely redone or removed. So it really is a mixed bag of properties.
Does it make sense for, Angus and I actually went through this list and not the entire area, but almost all of the Brant Point,
Okay.
those streets, and sort of prioritized ones that we thought were kind of already too far gone versus some that haven't really been touched.
Mhm.
So does it make sense for us to give you that list as sort of a priority schedule?
Yeah, yes, is my only caveat, on that, as long as it's based on this original list from the RFQ and we've.
It's right off of your list.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
That will be, yes, that will be so much easier, yes, and I think. Taking the list and prioritizing it into this phase for what you guys think that would be beneficial for this time and but even down the road. Because again,
Mhm.
how densely populated even Brant Point is and
Yeah.
what we want to. Survey is gonna take a little bit longer.
It will, but every year we lose how
Yes,
many
agreed.
houses?
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
Sooner the better for these ones that are
Agreed.
still good.
Especially, I mean, East Lincoln, there's a lot of those little guys on there.
That's a hot spot right there, because those are all gonna get redeveloped
Yeah.
pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Wish Google Maps had a date on them. I mean, I'm looking at the Google Maps of
Oh, wait,
photographic site. And
I was looking at the one you were talking about, is it called? At the end of North. Yeah,
yeah, behind Nantucket Hotel.
so am
And
I
you can't tell what,
hearing,
you can see construction, but you can't tell when the photograph was taken, so there's no sense of how long ago all this was happening.
oh, yeah. Did Mickey, you and Angus, did you have ones on Hulbert that you agreed with?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Some on Easton, many on Holbert, a
Okay.
lot on the inner streets. But I
So-
think Angus can sort of synthesize this list and maybe just.
Yeah.
Can you do that, Angus? Just kind of like give a Holly a list of the ones that we thought were high priorities?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what I did was put X's and checks. The ones
That's
that
fine.
were like gone, got an X, and the ones that definitely want to be on, got a check. And the rest are just marked as, yeah, we want a survey, but it's not, it's somewhere in between.
Yep,
Mhm.
okay. I think that would be very, very helpful. Because again, this work that we're doing right now is just gonna help us for the next.
Right, it'll set us up for the next one, but let's
Yes.
get some priority ones done first.
Yes, absolutely.
How many
'Cause
can we
just
do down
looking at
there? How many
What's
can
that?
we do down in Brantwood?
47.
47 is what we
47?
want to, yeah, what we want to recommend.
Okay,
Holly, the Form As, I mean, when you have a block of 6, is that any more or less work than 6 Form Bs, or is it the same information and amount of work, except it's just a different form because it's a cluster?
I think
Like, does
it's-
it count as one or does
It does not count
six?
as one, it would count as 6. Just like when they did the row house for the Philip Folger, that was actually for all 5 and that included as 5.
So it may as well be 5 Bs, except it's an A because it's a cluster.
Correct, because it meets this definition of a collection. And I've talked to Pal about this in the past on, there might be, and this is looking at the broader picture of some of the areas. So for instance, Sconset is a good example of with the Underhill cottages. That would be beneficial to have as an overall
Mhm.
survey form, but we as a same, we might want to go, well, you know what? We also see the reason to have individual surveys with more
Absolutely.
information.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that I've represented that to Pal, is that would be something that we would want, because I want to say some of those in particular have already had surveys on it.
Mhm.
So it would be updating, plus the work again that Sconset Trust had done and that they continue to do. So there are going to be areas that we may say, hey, we need to have an area form and then also do individual Form Bs. But for the most part, the Form A, if you take a look at the one, and I can resend that to you all, the one that they did for the Folger row house on Orange Street. It still gives a description of each one of those units.
Mhm,
Just
right.
recently used it for 17 Orange,
Mhm.
as well as, a overall, and that property in particular was also surveyed by Habs back in the 70s.
Mhm.
So there's that's included.
The one you got on Brant Point, the White Elephant Cottages, that block of cottages.
Yes,
I can see a Form A makes sense there.
yes,
Even though it's filled with pretty unique buildings.
yes.
But they'll each get covered individually too, I take it.
Well, they would be that, I mean, that again, that's a question. Is this area something that we want to have individual Form Bs on for, or would the area form itself be sufficient? And that would be up to, my personal opinion would be up to Pal to give that.
Well, the purpose, I mean, if the white elephant chooses to renovate one of those cottages.
Yep.
Then we're all gonna be looking at the form that the cottage is on and using that to help
Mhm.
inform,
Yep.
how to handle that. So we'll need pretty specific information on each building, I think, just because they're gonna get handled one at a time. So I don't know what the answer to the question is,
Yeah,
but they need pretty specific information per building, I would say.
Do we know if the cottages are included in the upcoming renovation White Elephant's doing?
yes, they are.
Okay, that's just why I thought I'd ask.
And I only know, I don't know as far as the structure and interior. I do know that they're all getting roofs. If they're submitting applications for those, they submitted, which is under review, fencing and the arbor, and yeah, they are sprucing the place up. Whether that includes interior renovations and any exterior renovations besides the roof, I have no idea, but yes, they are.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it probably is.
We should ask them to do the survey before they do it.
Yeah, if we could.
That would be helpful, but again, yeah, this would be something, looking at the age of those structures in particular, for the 50s and 60s. Would it be beneficial to have an individual? I don't necessarily think so, because if you look at the one that they did for the row houses, they still were able to provide detailed information. They were still able to provide photographs for those individual units. It's the characteristic aspect. So again, we have it defined in here. I really leaned on their expertise. I think Underhill cottages, when we get to that point down the road, would be an example of, this is a unique circumstance. The area form would be helpful, but we still want to have.
Absolutely, yeah. And if
So-
as long as in the White Elephant area, if they get, photographs and
Oh, yeah.
brief descriptions of each building, I think that would cover it.
Yeah. So yeah, if we could, if you can get me more of that would be fantastic. I hope you guys don't mind the methodology I was going through and based on the survey plan. But you all do bring up good points on.
Yours
where
was a
those
perfect
properties-
place to start from. So it helped us get to our list, and I think we could just kind of combine,
Perfect.
work.
Team effort.
Yes,
effort.
well, that's what it's all
Total team
about.
effort,
It's all about teamwork. All about teamwork. Okay. Where are we at now?
I think.
So, so the next, yeah, that brings us. Are we finished with all the survey work for now for the discussion?
Just wanted to give an update on the fiscal 23-24.
Oh, yes, please.
I sent it priority UPS mail. And they received it the Friday before it was due, which was February 7th, 6th, 7th, something like that. And I got the email notification that they got it that Friday. So
The third.
very excited.
They got it the third.
Thank you. I was trying to look to see what that
It
was.
was due the 7th.
Yes, it was due the 7th. They got it the 3rd. Usually we hear back in March, so we'll find out. I can tell you this, I don't want to speculate, but based on the notification that I got from the state, there was only 6 CLGs that submitted this round.
Hmm.
So
Pretty good odds.
Good.
that's pretty good odds.
Good
Yes,
odds,
yeah.
yes. So let's hope. There were a lot more this is another point. Why CLG helps. There were more non-CLGs that submitted for that pot of money than there were CLGs. So, and they're required to give to CLGs.
Oh, good.
So you
6
get
doesn't
priority.
sound like a big number. How many were there last time?
I don't remember what they were last time, but there's 27 of us. So,
That's good.
Okay.
yeah, very
Great.
good. So I will inform the commission as soon as I hear on that.
All right, so I think the next thing up is the Milestone Road, Pulpus Road project, and it's nothing that I really want to dive into except just to take the temperature of the commissioners about just being involved. earlier than later in this process than the
Yeah.
last project that happened there. Yeah, that is a long document. Um, I'm happy to hear from anybody, but it just seemed to make sense. Did anyone watch the meeting? Sort of see the discussion? There's still work to be done with the design and the planning and, the budgeting and so forth. But I was thinking to just write a letter saying, we are an interested party, and just, remind them of the special concessions that we have because of being a historic district, as far as signage and other, things like that.
Holly, do you know, are they required to do a chapter 106 review, or us to do the review? It's
I don't know the specifics on that. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're getting state or federal funding, you're required to do 106. And that's why they have the project notification form that gets sent to PNF to the state, and that's all. So again, I don't even know where that stands. If they even got to that part yet, I don't know. And I do want to just caution the commission on the fact that, from a staffing's perspective, we all know we don't have a transportation manager anymore, a planner anymore. And I don't know where the priority of all this stuff goes then.
Holly, can you bring that up one page? Or down one page?
We should send a letter.
The first page after that with their priorities. and stuff.
Introduce them.
just to say
Yeah,
we're
on the
here.
record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe,
The thing that bothered me most about that was, number one, the establishment of automatic traffic signals. That would be a non-starter for me.
That's what's excluded, isn't it? Prohibited.
no, that's.
Well, that's prohibited. Yeah, right. And so, I see some of that, but it just, how that works.
Well, along
No,
with
but I think
travel
it's
lanes.
saying that these 7 things can't happen because of,
I
What?
see it says
Yeah.
prohibited, but just even the fact that it's, well, I suppose the fact that it's on there is
Prohibiting, yeah.
good, but
But they prohibited travel lanes, and there they are on Old South Road.
exactly
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah, I wondered how that happened.
well, but it says turning lanes. I don't think there's.
Exactly my point.
Well, I think if we write a letter, I was just going to say, Tom, I think that's a good point. But Holly also brought up that we don't have a person. Maybe the time to send a letter and remind them of this is when whoever this new person is just say like, hey, we wanted to know, like, we're a partner with you. We wanted you to know these are some of the things you're gonna have to take, like, we're happy to give you context, background, whatever, but that way that person knows that we're here as a resource and we're supportive of, but like, that way they don't kind of go down that path and maybe waste time, and then obviously it will be
Without
something
us.
that, like, oh, you're gonna put traffic, well, that's not gonna happen, type of thing. I don't know if you guys think that makes sense, because I do think a letter would be helpful, but maybe, I'm afraid if we send it now and there's no one there, then it goes
It'll just
into
get lost.
the black box.
The thought was, and I think that's a good point, that we don't have a traffic person now, is, how much is this going to move forward without a traffic person? At least the powers that be, it makes sense for them to know that we're on the radar. And then we catch up the traffic person when they come. But just that's probably one more reason that we should at least get our foot in the door.
I agree.
Because
I
we
agree.
don't have someone there.
I agree. I think we should at least have some notice on the record that we were wanting to be part of this discussion from the beginning. We can reiterate it when we have a
I'm in favor
transportation
of
plan.
adopting what Abby just said. A letter from us, just putting them on notice that we're paying attention is what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, we can send it whenever. I think we just say
Well,
we're here as a resource, whatever, and we can even, if you want to incorporate language when the person is, we're happy to spend, like, have a meeting with them, whatever.
I do think that, to your point, that's very important to emphasize. We understand that there's a you know, probably a pause in this project without having a actual staff member, but, you know. Yeah,
Sure.
I think that's good.
So did someone,
Into-
does someone want to make a motion and
I
second?
make a motion that we send that letter.
I second.
Thank you, Georgia. Abby?
I support the motion.
Nikki?
I,
We don't have David, do we?
No.
And I as well. So we'll get a letter off to them and then catch whoever comes into the traffic up with our communication and whatever's developed since then. Did everyone have a chance? We can move on to refining our goals. I feel like a lot of this is just sort of ongoing, but did everyone have a chance to review what Abby and David had put together for our list of goals? I mean, it's everything that we've been talking about. I had thought about just sending a, have everyone just mark in order what their priorities were with each of those, one through whatever. But my concern with that is that, anything at the end could easily be just sort of dropped off or forgotten. And a lot of it has to do with who's willing to do what to make the things on our list of what is important to us happen. So I feel like it's a combination of priorities and also what is achievable. Tom?
Yeah, I had a question. I see on number 7 here that Abby's volunteered to spearhead this initiative, and that's as a training captain to make sure that the commissioners are up to date. But I'd like to know up to date on what.
I think the intention of that is I had to take all of the latest MHC trainings. So it's really just making sure everyone has all the information. So example was the one that I went to for the MPPF, the preservation funding. So I would just be happy to, circulate those documents, give like a quick overview for people and make sure everybody's aware of what, the training. They also did one on tax credits, stuff like that. So that's really what that's intended for, but happy to incorporate anything if there's other things you guys want.
that sounds perfect.
And typically, those are the trainings that I forward on from MHC. Jen Doherty is our CLG coordinator. She's actually the one who does the training. But I think it's also important to know that she provides not only a PDF of the document of whatever the topic is after the training, but also a link to the PowerPoint, or not the PowerPoint, but the Zoom meeting, the YouTube. And that could be a future resource. So for instance, if you can't go to one of those trainings, I think that would be awesome to say, hey, maybe if you're going to take on their leadership, I love that. That's awesome. You can say, hey, I'm really interested in this one, because you can register your email for these trainings, be on notice. And even if you don't end up going because time doesn't happen, you've got something else going on, you'll still get the email back from MHC saying, here's the training information.
Right.
I highly encourage that because, we're all busy. And, it's, some of this stuff is a little repetitive. I will say I have put a little bug in Jen's ear now that she's been the new CLG coordinator for the state for probably over a year now. Say, hey, they've mentioned about specific CLG training, and I haven't seen that yet. And
Don't worry, I filled out the survey and I put that in
Thank
there
you.
as a thing.
I've been asking. I said, there's one thing of having their typical train, because a lot of this is repetitive. I've seen a lot of it over the years. So it's really and truly trying to make sure that everybody is, up to date. There's just on all the different aspects. Plus, there's new things that are coming around. I would, if you haven't already, look at Preservation Action. They are the nationwide nonprofit who do all the politicking in DC. Actually, I want to say next month is when they're going to be having their Preservation Action Week. But they do a lot of advocacy. They're the ones who are pushing the state and federal governments about historic tax credit increases, allowing it so it's not just for commercial, they're the ones who advocate for that big pot of money that we're utilizing for state historic preservation offices to provide to their CLGs for surveying work and every other project. So obviously it's a top-down approach, but just being on their email list, I would highly recommend that. Sorry.
I don't know
Tom,
if
did that
this-
answer your
if
question?
This is the appropriate time or place to mention this, but, you know, we've gone over and talked about it many times about helping the HDC come up with a new version of building with Nantucket in mind, but it just never seems to happen.
Huge project.
It's a big project.
And I don't know if that one thing, well, I know, but
Goals.
it's a huge project, but somebody's got to start it in order to get going, you know, it's old, you know, they part of it, in all, I have all three of the original ones. And they all say the same thing, you know, you're not supposed to build up on a hill, yet everybody's building on the top of a hill, these giant houses, you know,
Right.
so stuff like that.
Nobody pays attention to it.
It is extremely difficult at times.
It was out of print for years and struggled to get it
yes.
back into print.
Yes, and NPT spearheaded that effort. That's the one that I have. That kind of ties into Sconset Trust, right? With this is for me very similar to how I see when we did Resilient Nantucket as an addendum to building with Nantucket in mind. Because of the colorful photos, I think there's a lot of people that would agree with me that the substantiveness of building with Nantucket in mind is still highly relevant. What is needing update is the formatting, the photographs, the diagrams, those type of things. There are some things in there verbiage wise that may need updating or
Putting it
referencing
online,
and stuff
right?
like that. It is online. It is currently online in a
Updating it
PDF format per each
Oh,
chapter. It's on the town's website through the HDC. Now that we have the preservation planning, I have asked Francia to literally tie everything together. So you could be on our page, you know, the HDC's page, the preservation planning page, the CLG page, and you can still get to everything else. So that
You
was
know,
my whole.
From your experience being in the HDC office, and when people are submitting applications who haven't really been to Nantucket, or, you know, the Rock Island architects or homeowners or whatever, do they even know about building with Nantucket in mind?
That was a good point that I was going to bring up.
You should give it to
Exactly.
them.
You know, nobody's using it because they don't think they're aware of it. And the people that are aware of it, I don't think are using it. I've been to enough HDC meetings. I don't ever see anybody mentioning it at all. It just, you know, it's a shame. It's because it's not up to date. It's not a requirement that they look at it.
Maybe it should be requirement number one.
You know, it's kind of like leading a horse to water, you know. It's one of those things where I will say that there are outside, not on Nantucket architects, agents, whoever, who will reach out. I get contacted, hey, you know, this is what we're wanting to do, this blah, blah, blah. And yeah, they are pointed in the direction of building with Nantucket in mind. You know, it's one of those things. Try to lean on the agents and architects that are here that have been doing it to at least educate their owners, educate their clients. Sometimes there's, you know, again, it's all about, you know, education.
That's when the program for realtors comes in.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and there
Well,
was a lot
wait,
of.
hold on, I just said it, Tom, what if we did a workshop on it? We said we were gonna do a workshop for NARAB, what if we did a workshop for that?
I'm all.
Or
in favor of that.
maybe we do it as part of the CLG, so it's HGC and NHC.
What is the workshop described in it?
Well, I'm just saying maybe part of it is talking about building with Nantucket in mind.
What does it mean in a practical sense? What does it mean on an everyday?
Yeah, like, well,
Be more aware of what's in the,
Like, what
what's
is
in the
it?
manual.
how do you use it? Yeah, like, what is it? How would you use it?
I know Mickey and Angus and myself could pinpoint certain aspects of building with Nantucket in mind that we're always reiterating on. Dormers, additive massing. I mean,
Garage location?
garage locations, garage door types.
Right.
window types, yeah, there's a
But-
list goes on and on.
But at least if we were, we had, it could be one of our, like, education. in
Yeah,
the
it could-
community workshops.
Actually, I agree with
think
that
it
one.
might be helpful just to refresh, and at least if we get it out there, and if we do it on Zoom, then also it becomes something that, and it's a resource, we can put it on the website that like, hey, if you're working on a project, check out this workshop, and then
No,
the person can watch it.
I like that mostly because I think we would have to, you'd almost require everyone on the HDC to attend
Mhm.
the workshop, and I'll bet, that, some of them don't really know building in Nantucket Mine terribly well. So if anybody, if the most important people to understand it are the HDC board members, it'll help them. I wonder how many local people will, they probably feel like, oh, I already know that, I don't
Yeah.
need to attend.
Well,
But
there's also, and I hate to say it, but there are architects, designers, agents here that should know, and they choose not to know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
or
Correct.
they want to be told no. So there's only so, again, it's
they
that
don't really
horse.
care if it's in the book or not, they're gonna try to get it anyway.
Yeah,
That's why I
it's-
think if it were a requirement somehow, that like number one in the, I don't know how the art buildings are approved, but it was like number one, consult with building with Nantucket in mind, then at least if somebody didn't, you
Mhm.
can say, did you look at number one? Number one requires you to do X.
Yeah, and
Obviously you didn't.
that's where the whole review process comes in.
Yeah, you can't
And-
require someone to do it
Yeah.
before they apply,
Yeah.
but you can strongly emphasize doing it.
Yes,
Yeah.
And if we have a PDF, we have a workshop, like, hey, you have all these resources, as if you're not
Right.
using them and you come in
Then-
blind, then that's kind of on you.
Good point, Abby.
I mean, if, like Polly's saying, if we lead them to water and we're giving them the path and we're doing all the things,
Yeah.
it's gonna make it harder to justify, oh, no, I didn't read the PDF,
Not
I didn't
having
look
done
at the workshop, I didn't
Yeah.
talk to anybody, and it's kind of like,
Which is-
well, why wouldn't you do one of those things?
Like basically saying, I don't care.
Right,
there's only so many checklists and thingies that we can do that we,
Yeah.
half the time, I think people just sign it and go, they don't
Yeah.
even read it. So that, again, it's down to that individual person.
I don't know if this makes sense or not, but you could also do like a little brief video of building with Nantucket in mind, just a brief explanation of
The
like
major
an introduction of
Yeah.
it, each chapter is what
major
they cover.
issues. Yeah.
And then somebody can just click on that as they're, filling out an application or doing design.
Regular
of the house.
idea.
like one of those 2-minute video type of things.
Right, a very short 2 to 5 minutes, just a brief kind of overview of building Nantucket in mind.
Yeah.
That would be something that this
Shows-
commission could.
Shows what
really-
dormers are approved, what windows are approved, what doorways
Yeah,
are approved.
with
that kind of
pictures.
stuff. Exactly.
Yeah,
Seems
it'd be
a good
easy
idea.
and not, it wouldn't be a half an hour space of time, it would be much quicker,
And that would be something that we could have on the town's website.
Yeah,
yeah,
Oh, that's how we do it.
right on the HDC's website.
Yep.
Yeah,
so I think.
Add that to
whatever-
our goals, the outreach to the public
Yeah.
is definitely,
Yeah.
it's just incentivizing them. So if there's an accountability, like you were saying, Abby, where it's offered, and then if they're not showing up with it, that's on them. And
Mhm.
the on them is a denial at the HDC, basically, right? Because
Or at least the HTC can ask, it can, even if it doesn't become part of the application process, I think what the HTC can say is when they are reviewing something, they can say, well,
This
did
is-
you look at the PDF?
Right.
Did you watch the video? And if the person has to be like, no, I didn't do anything, then at least it's out there of like,
Mhm.
okay, well, we did give you these resources.
Yeah.
There's the checklist, you could actually put it on the checklist, watch the video if you haven't seen it before.
That'd be
if
something.
this were something that we could, somehow tie into the realtors, because I think that's one of the,
Oh,
that's
yes.
one of the dams of where all of the sort of the pressure comes, and there's an opportunity there to let them know what the guidelines are and what resources there are to sort of judge what their anticipation is of what their new Nantucket property is going to be.
The massing is a big thing. What comes to my mind whenever I think about that is recently, it's going on right now, out on the Eel Point Road, right near Dionis. And they have that giant house it's not on the top of the hill, but they're actually recreating the hill. They brought so
Hills.
much dirt there. And the cement wall is like, it's like the Alamo. I mean, it's unbelievable what is going on there. They got to look at that. I mean, that's not Nantucket. And that has to do with the HDC, but it also has to do with the architects. It's crazy.
Well, building with Nantucket in mind has been on the list for a number of people's lists for a while, not just the updating and the relevant things for now with pools and air conditioning and but also just the old things of as Holly mentioned, sort of the hot button things of massing and dormers and all that stuff, setbacks.
I bet, Angus, I bet we could get the community television to help us with that video.
Yeah.
I
I
think so
bet they
too.
do it as a public service.
Yeah. that'd be great.
Yeah. And like
Lisa Getter.
Nikki said, make it short, like
Yeah.
2.5 minutes,
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
but just hit those couple
So
of
we-
quick highlights and give.
We need to organize
images.
the points that need to be
Mhm.
presented and the visuals to accompany those points, good and bad.
Mhm.
Massing good and bad windows.
Right,
yeah.
yeah, with this
And then
slideshow.
figure out how to present it, maybe somebody like Abby, who's photogenic,
Mhm.
and Patty,
Mhm.
and have NCTV do it, either in interview format or in a direct video format. I bet they do it. We create that.
I think they would.
That would be a wonderful
And quite
project.
frankly, I do think that the HDC would really like that.
I bet they,
They
Well,
would.
I think this is all really relevant and great conversation, but we're a little off. It was my fault. I'm the one that brought that up, but I think we ought to include that on our list of, goals and priorities is to do something about building with Nantucket mind, but, rather than taking up the whole 2 hours talking about that, I mean, I think we ought to move on, but I think this is a really good, what we've just talked about was very good points about that.
But I think no matter what, Tom, it does fall under, and that's you can see a couple of the bullets here. I think the education,
Mhm.
there's a couple of bullets here. I think the point is probably just, it sounds like from our goals that some sort of education outreach
Right.
is gonna be important this year.
Well, it's all about, I think, educating ourselves and educating the public. It's a holistic aspect. I'm all about education. So where are we?
So as far as building with Nantucket in mind, so that would be an outreach education thing. But what about the updating aspect of that? Is there some way to, it seems like the HTC is getting sort of, there's more work around sort of the organizational aspect of it and other sort of looking at the process deeper than just processing applications. Is this an opportunity to incorporate some sort of focus group to finally work on updating building with Nantucket in mind?
Well, I brought it up just looking at the bullet point, further refining the NHC annual goals, because I don't think we're going to do that in a year, but it would be great.
That process to me, I've looked at that book and said, where do you start when you want to update and bring in new information and make it more accessible? And I think don't we have to sub that out? Don't we have to hire
We need a consultant.
a
Yes.
consultant to
Yeah.
do that work?
And that's what I was gonna say. When this commission was first created in 2019, that was something that was brought up to the HDC, how this commission could help the HDC update building with Nantucket in mind. Because there are funds floating around that
Right, we get
CPC
grants.
funds, well,
Yeah.
CPC funds, if it's still sitting there, I gotta talk to Ken.
Oh,
on
it's
that.
already been funded.
This was, yes, that's why everybody's been saying, hey, where does this stand? There's ownership with the HDC, obviously, but they are very busy.
Mhm.
Obviously, it would make sense from a logistics perspective to have a consultant. So we would do an RFP, RFQ, whatever it is, whichever one that finance would require us to do, to get hire a consultant to do the whole process. Because you also got to remember, we have addendums to building with Nantucket in mind that have never been codified.
Mhm.
And that's where I say that, you know, when we did Resilient Nantucket, it's an addendum to building with Nantucket in mind, but I saw that as the start of looking at the entire structure of building with Nantucket in mind, how it can be, you know, updated. So that's where the professionals of a consultant would come into play. Obviously, when it comes to that point, having some type of work group with both commission, you know, some sort of,
It's a perfect
group.
CLG project.
it sure is. I agree with that. So that would be something,
We can bring it up at our CLG meetings.
Yes.
It's on our goal.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Right.
Holly, is there any, speaking of CLG and the HTC, has there been any outreach as far as when we're going to be able to meet with them?
Yes and no, actually, with everything else that's been going on, it's been on the back of my mind that I was gonna reach out to you and, the chair of the HTC and say, hey, I would recommend sometime, in May, probably be with the best bet to have it done. It's kind of, you know, it's after town meeting. It's gonna be before the middle of the year. So and as well as, it should be done before June. So May is my date that I was gonna float.
Oh, I was on the website and they had the notes from 2021. I don't know if there's the agenda notes from 2022, but they probably need to be added.
For CLG. So we have to, that's another thing. So by our MOU, we're only required to meet once together as the full CLG for the fiscal year, not the calendar year.
Oh, okay.
So that's why we just never
So-
met last year.
Okay, 'cause
My
they-
my question is, not that there is such a thing, but when was their lightest period?
Yeah,
The age,
That's funny. The last 3 years have been crazy. So, I can say that we're seeing a little bit of a downcline. I think the economy is
They're
part of
catching
that.
up on the list.
Yeah, we are. Hey, as of this week, we are in February. We're reviewing applications that were submitted in February. That's,
I'm just
Wow.
saying, that we
Wow.
should be
I know.
sensitive to their schedule. And
Absolutely.
if we can, you know, have a meeting at a period of the year which is least disruptive to them, then that's when we should do it.
There ever a period it's
I
not.
want to say
started for
April.
them.
I mean, May is we're getting into the real crunch of spring
Right.
and getting things,
Right.
trying to get done. April might actually be a little easier.
Well, I'll reach out,
Time.
throw out a
To
bunch of
Ray and-
dates, and
what's that?
throw out a bunch of dates and tell them they have to pick.
when
Yeah.
is the last that we can meet? I mean, how long can we wait with it?
End of June.
Yeah.
And to your point, I thought that would be way too late.
Yeah, too busy.
Yeah,
way too.
You would know better than anybody, right, Holly, when they're at least, you know, busy period is.
That's like, trying to, you know, win the Powerball. I mean, there's no way. But again, looking at the fact that we are already in February agenda applications for review, the fact that we have seen a slight decline, it's probably all about the economy. So
Well, let's shoot for April or May.
Yeah, I think so too.
Mhm.
So that's on my to-do list, to narrow that down. Of course, but I do think that this topic of general building with Nantucket in mind is definitely a CLG effort.
Project, yeah. for sure.
Well, and like Mickey brought up, if we wanted to like get a consultant and stuff, I think it's definitely a good place to put it in, because we want them to be on board and.
Oh, of course.
So,
It's all about ownership. And I think there was a little bit of, people not liking, other people saying things and wanting to control. And so I think at the end of the day, if it comes as a joint,
Yeah.
let's do this together as joint and the benefit of the entire historic district, that would be a good thing to do.
It also takes a lot of heat off of those members and some of those more contentious meetings when they can just say, well, it's right in here and you've already seen it, you know?
you should have seen it,
Or
and if you
should have
didn't
seen
see it,
It's
you
on
should
you.
read it.
I reference building with Nantucket in mind specific pages every week.
Yeah.
So it's a leading horse to
We'll
water
get
thing.
that. We can make that happen.
But no, I think that's great to be able to, to be able to assist and say, hey, building with Nantucket in mind is important.
Are there
Um,
any other things on this list or not on this list that that anyone wants to talk about?
As far as, let me see, hold on, let me do this. I'm gonna stop share. I was wondering, since we're on our goals aspect and we've kind of brought up the, I don't know how to do this. We've brought up the website. Did everybody have a chance to look at the website at all? Here.
Oh, Clement, welcome.
Hi,
Hi.
Clement.
Hi, Clement.
Hey,
I'm here for, I'm here for a little break.
How's teaching?
It's great.
Good. Lots of fun.
Awesome.
They're lucky they've got you.
That's what I said.
I love it.
Yeah, it's true.
All right. No, this is not the greatest, but it's kind of slow.
what are we doing?
She's just showing the updates
Looking
on the
up our
website.
Now, bear with me while I move you guys over here. Okay, so as you can see, we have the historical commission page. Everything should be up to date. We have the historic tax credit applications on here as well. A link to the state's website. Obviously, if there's anything else we want to add, we have additional, all those other things that we've had on the page before. Update of our members, because that needed to be done. And then you look over here to quick links. So this is to the preservation planning page. And there we go. This was just something that I wrote, just to give it a synopsis of the overall preservation planning in Nantucket. Could be a little bit probably added to, but my whole intention was to make sure that we had our CLG linked HDC Historical Commission back. So if we go to CLG, this, we talked about CLG, minutes, everybody that's on the commissions. And then we have our actual, the first report that I had to do to the state. And then this is the actual letter that was received, giving us our, hey, you all are a CLG. I wanted to have that available to the public because I think that's important. But what I foresee the CL, and I wanted to a public comment that was brought up last time. The CLG page, this isn't anything new. There's other communities within the Commonwealth that actually have a CLG page. I want to say Marblehead was one. And I think there was another one that I saw. Not many of them do, but again, there's only 27 communities in the Commonwealth, and not everyone has a joint commissions. So, but yeah, so the preservation planning page is what I foresee to be the spot where people come to I got a historic house. What do I do? Kind of getting away from everybody having to go to HGC. So that way it would be linked there. I'm gonna want to submit an HGC application, click, and it will take you here. But that's how I envision. That way there's a one central shop, because a lot of people that will come in and say, how do I find this historic information? Where do I go? And if it's not somebody that's on a regular that does these things, it can be a little cumbersome.
Holly,
So
do you
if
have
they-
MPT on there?
On the
It
what?
seems like MPT, it seems like it would be a good place for a link.
Nope, but we can definitely do
Yeah,
that.
that's
I don't think
might
there
be a
was
good
on
idea to
HGC.
provide a link to like NPT or NHA, like some of those organizations.
So so looking at the HDC's page,
Mary and
There-
Rita, do you have any comment on that? I didn't mean to just throw that out, but it seems like that's a big part of preservation on Nantucket.
so a lot of these links that are already up here already, is what I envision on the preservation planning page. We also have building with Nantucket in mind over here.
Mhm.
It's kind of, right now it's better, but I want to envision it a little bit cleaner. Having a link on here, hopefully we'll get it from Wisconsin Trust for their building Wisconsin in mind, which is obviously a shot of building with Nantucket in mind. So yes, if there's anything that anybody sees that they would like to add on to this, please let me know, because I have, conversations with Florencia Rulo, who's our public outreach manager. And she can definitely add that on here.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a long time, so I'll do that.
Okay. And yes, if there's any links that are willing to have links, would love to have NPT and Wisconsin Trust on here.
Yeah, it would be great if you want to link to MPT, and we can link on our site as well to the preservation planning page. I know we link to the NHC in general, but
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll check on that. I don't know what we got.
You guys have a pretty good website yourself, so I think it would be beneficial for the town to have a link to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. I agree.
We good on this one, Mr. Chair?
Are we good with our goals?
I think so. I think, just to, I notice you have the MPPF on here. I did want to mention, here's the instructions for MPPF,
I know.
which is, that's not even the application itself, but I kind of wanted just to mention that, currently through the, our new Park and Rec manager, there is conversation with a consultant, Weston Sampson, who's done quite a bit on Nantucket. And I had familiarity with them before coming back home to Nantucket. That they are working on the concession stands out of the Park and Rec master plan that was approved some time ago. And one of the things that I brought to their attention was 2 out of the 3 concessions that the town owns are historic resources contributing to the national and local district. And it would behoove the town to, if we're going to be looking at these structures from a coastal resiliency perspective, from not only our resilient Nantucket design guidelines have to kick in, but also if there's state and federal funding that we as a town can apply for, let's do that. So I can tell you that, both myself and Abby have listened to their discussions at the state level. They every year they allocate a certain amount of money, and actually it's $1 million, I think, is what they have available this fiscal year. I think last year it was less, but for projects, whether it's a pre-application project, so doing a feasibility study on a structure for a potential project, or actual the development project of it. And one of the things that through the Park and Rec that they're working on is looking at the overall, where they foresee these facilities in the light of climate change and flooding and adaptation and all that. So it's on the radar with Ken as a part of our real estate, out of the town, but also as the chair of CPC, because one of the cool things about the MPPF grant is we as a town could apply for those fundings with the matching grant from CPC. So this is something that has been brought up to town leadership. My only thing on that is currently I don't know where this planning process stands. They're just really getting the feet wet and getting public opinions on where we foresee Jetty's Beach and Children's Beach and Surfside. And that kind of is going to lay the ground running for where we're going to go. But the biggest thing is we got 2 historic resources, one more historic than the other, that need to be adapted for climate change and sea level rise and how that relates to the structure itself. We don't want to preclude the historic structure. So again, I've been an advocate to say, hey, this is all great, fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure it's done, and having this funding source would be beneficial as we're all paying taxpayers, but at the same time, making sure that it's following the proper Secretary of Interior standards and all that. So that's it in a nutshell.
Can I just get, so the
Yeah.
Jetties obviously is one of them. Is the Children's Beach the other concession?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that one was built in the 60s, I believe, 50s, 60s. So, and that's something too. Look at, if you've been to Children's, we have portalets in the back.
Yeah.
Right? And we all know under the Secretary of Interior standards that when you're doing any type of tax credit, it's a rehabilitation. So technically they could look at that building and say, how can we modify this building to actually include handicap accessibility? Handicap accessibility bathrooms and not have these portalets here, get them away. So I brought that into their conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also looking at the structure, both the structures themselves, how are they going to be elevated to meet flooding? Where do we foresee that within the coastal resiliency plan? All of it. It's been a big holistic, and Vince, now he's our sustainability manager, but the coastal resiliency manager, really and truly coordinator, who foresee the CRP go through, he's been involved with those conversations as well. So wherever that stands, I just want this commission to know at some point, we're gonna hopefully be able to apply for those funding.
Yeah, and I think for this year, our thought was to apply for like the initial kind of to do the assessment and figure out what exactly needs to be done, and that's what we would apply for the funding. But the good thing about this MPPF is then you can do many phases, and then as we're doing the actual work, what we could do is if we apply this year, we could apply to do the assessment, but then as we're doing part of that work, we can get CPC match or not, or however we do that.
Yeah.
But then as we do the different phases, we could also get we could continue to match the CPC as we design it. So I think the thought is that we'd be able to use it multiple.
Yeah,
phases.
wherever it lands in with the planning phases, I'm trying not to push the consultants and, Charlie over at the Park and Rec. But at the same time that they're aware of, there is a schedule with these funding sources at the state, and that it would be, that we can do as a pre for the assessment, which is needed. There was an assessment that was done this past year by Preservation Institute Nantucket. They took the students, they took in the previous project that was done in 2007 and really incorporated the coastal resiliency and updated it. And actually, they had conversations with the consultant. This was back in July, because we all met on site in the heat upstairs, actually at Jetty's Beach Pavilion. But yeah, this is good, I think, for preservation and for the town to be
It's a long-term plan. I mean,
It would
it's just to get CPC funding and then.
It
it's-
is.
it's-
Well,
It's-
that's why it would be over
it would-
multiple years.
Yeah, it would be a multiple year thing. But again, it would have to also go into line with the planning phases that they're doing for the overall concession stands. What does the town foresee? So and it's all about sense of place. I brought that up to their attention, how do we as a community want to foresee these locations look like? So that's important. I just wanted to touch base on that.
Good.
We're good on that.
It certainly behooves us to take advantage of any available funds, and all those sound like good causes. What is the next step in moving that forward? It sounds like there's a good, to set the foundation for any number of projects. It sounds like it's somewhat versatile, but what's the first thing that we do?
Well, first, I mean, I think it's important. We have in our survey plan a list of all the town-owned resources, and that was first and foremost. But with this project in particular, I personally don't see us applying this year. And I'm not saying that to be, a Debbie Downer. I guess Debbie's out there, but you know what I mean? It's because of the time frame,
Right.
and we're still in a very, very preliminary planning stages of what we as a town foresee. Our consultants are leading and I'm not a direct project manager. This is all in Park and Rec. I'm involved. Ken is involved. But
When is the deadline?
March 17th.
it's coming up a month, so that
But-
I don't see it, but
It also, I think the important part of that, and that's part of what we learned at the training, but what we could do is get the CPC part
correct.
finalized this year, and then
Correct.
we could apply, because also when you're applying for matching, you need to have it, and so
Right.
that's where the timing is not
That's a
great with
perfect
this.
idea. They're
So
done
I
next
think-
September, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they do it in September, so I think that was what Holly and I were thinking is, let's get the CPC.
First.
Yeah.
Get that all organized, we get that applied, and then next year, we would apply for this, having secured the CPC funding, have that all documented. And then our impression is if we do that, it also probably gives you a bit of a leg up when you're applying to that because they
think
see
so,
that you
yes.
have matching funding.
Yes.
So
Local
that was,
funding and all that,
Yes.
yeah.
yeah, so that was gonna be, I think our recommendation is figure it out on the CPC first, and then you apply for the matching funds.
So we should be aiming for September for,
Yeah, like socializing, getting a plan, getting everybody together, I would say later this spring, early summer.
And it's very helpful that we have Ken included, just because of his role with the town and the role.
he's
with-
gonna be included no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
he's
gonna
gonna
have,
be
he's
included.
gonna
in
have to
that,
know it's
exactly.
another boy.
So yeah, I mean, that was the whole part of it, and you know, this was brought to town's attention during COVID. But there was really no way to be able to, to work on something like this in the mix of a pandemic. This is a prime example because there's an adapted, approved plan to look at these concession stands, and it was like, okay, well, this is a good time to do it. And quite frankly, Ken was very happy when I told him, hey, do you know CPC funding can be as the matching? Perfect. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was good.
So that was all I was gonna add, but I think if everybody is okay with that, I think that was gonna be our plan for this one to see about getting this funding.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I like it.
Awesome.
It sounds good. So this will be on our radar for CPC in September and the grant the following year.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
You know, right, we get, town says, okay, it's time to go. Okay, we'll do it.
Well, then let's move on to the staff updates and announcements. Any
Yes.
Holly, where are we with the Coast Guard? And Brant,
So, yes, so after our last discussion of the lighthouses, I had, it was serendipitous, I guess. The Coast Guard reached out to me. And specifically about Brant Point. It wasn't about Great Point at all, but Brant Point. And they wanted to have a conversation and just more of an up for an FYI that they are looking at their historic facility down on Brant Point on how they could adapt the site to be more proactive with sea level rise and flooding, but also their overall functionality of the site, knowing that it's a historic resource, that they know it's on the National Register, all that kind of stuff. And so that was how that conversation, I didn't know what to expect really and truly. Myself, Ken and Andrew met with them on via Zoom. It was that week that I was homesick with the flu. So I was still working on some things. But it's going to be up to them to make that initial contact with us to say, this is where we're planning on doing. There really wasn't much to, they gave us a presentation, the ideas that they're throwing around, blah, blah, blah.
They have any
That's-
specific ideas regarding the lighthouse?
No, and I brought that up. Oh, well, that's not what we're looking at. They were looking at more of where their facility is, not the lighthouse itself.
Yeah.
And I did bring up the fact that the lighthouse is of concern. I do need to reach out again to the gentleman. There was multiple people in this conversation, this Zoom. One of them was one that I had spoken to previously, but he was the one that directed me to speak to somebody else. Again, they have a whole, prioritization of updates, and I was trying to just lay it out that, we are concerned, we as a town, that I've been contacted from the public on what exactly is going on. So I am here to say I don't have much more update than that, other than that I do plan on having a contact with them, especially before the springtime hits, to say, what exactly does the Coast Guard plan on doing with Brant Point. It's been some time, so.
what is
So
the of the lighthouse right now? Like versus decommission, like what is it called?
From the first conversation I had, they aren't looking to decommission anything anytime soon,
Okay,
years.
yeah.
And even that is a whole process within itself.
I was going to say, when I was at one of the trainings, I met with someone from Martha's Vineyard and they had just gotten one of their lighthouse decommissioned, which was really what they were lobbying for. And they did explain it takes a lot of like,
Yeah,
you need push from the government, or your like state representative, which, you know, I'm assuming if Dylan did it for them, he'd do it for us, but there is work involved, but that was the only way that they were able to then move forward with the preservation work that they wanted to do for their lighthouse, just as an FYI for people. But I know it's not an easy
I mean,
process.
I've even asked about the fact that they are a federal agency. They get their federal funding from Congress, just like how federal funding goes to all the state historic preservation offices. You also have federal departments that are allocated funding for the preservation of their sites. GSA, was that, I forgot what the acronym stands for, Governmental Service Association Administration, yeah, where they own anything
yeah.
outside of the park, outside of the Park Service, they own historic resources, they allocate funding, they even have certain planning, so, and looking at all the other, federal agencies, the Coast Guard's the one that's not listed, so I'm like, I don't quite understand that. Maybe that's just because they've been around for so long that it was prior to any of, National Historic Preservation Act. I don't know, that's a little bit of research on my end that I have to understand, but nonetheless, it is a priority. I wanted to touch base on, oh no, this goes to Tom if you wanted to. Wind farm.
Oh, before we switch over to the wind farm, I just wanted to clarify, Holly, during the Zoom, so the condition of the lighthouse came into the conversation and just our concern?
It was more or less a brief. They were there, they had a mission on what they wanted to talk to us about, and that was it. It was, no, that's a whole different thing.
As I understand it too, I'm sorry, Holly, but there's asbestos removal problems.
There was, that was part of it. But it wasn't on the ramp itself, it was inside the structure
Inside,
itself.
yeah.
Yes, and they have a whole remediation project,
Right.
process that you go with that.
Yeah.
But,
And it's
I
probably-
explained,
There's probably lead paint issues there and everything else, but we're dealing with the government, and they're the ones that make up the rules about all this stuff. And so they have mitigation stuff to deal with all that. It's just, for our purposes, it's the condition, the physical condition of the lighthouse.
Right.
It's not the, whether they want to decommission it or anything else,
Right.
So.
Sorry to interrupt. Tom, do you want to update us on the
Yeah,
windmill
so
situation?
we had a meeting with Mayflower Wind, and they had 3 people speak. They had a PowerPoint presentation, a video PowerPoint presentation, and I think the only part of it that really matters for us or anybody in Nantucket was the picture that they showed of what 159 1,166 foot windmills turbines are going to look like 23 miles southwest of Nantucket. And the picture that they showed was of a blue ocean with a blue sky and a horizon that was kind of opaque. And as a result, there were no windmills there, except I think that was deceptive in that that might have been taken at a certain period in the day. And so when it changes to the sunset or the sun is in a different position, you're gonna say, anyway, for our purposes, I made a presentation of our concerns, my concerns, people that I've talked to around town's concerns. And these folks have an answer for everything. And
answers.
when some folks that are representing the rats, which I'm not gonna belabor this subject with this, but residents against turbines in Nantucket, they took these folks to court. And the two women that represented rats showed up there with their lawyer, and Mayflower Wind showed up there with 24 lawyers. 24.
You're talking about Vineyard Wind. Yeah.
Lawyers.
Oh, they changed it.
And
Oh,
so
see.
every one of those guys is an expert in whatever it is you're going to say negative about what they're doing.
And they're all charging $500 an hour.
I would
At
think they're
least,
charging
yeah.
a lot more than that. And
Yeah, I was
so-
gonna say, that's probably the low end.
Yeah, it's probably the low end.
And so
Oh,
the point being is no matter what you say to them, they've got an answer for it. And I don't think it's far but from over for sure. And as it turns out, the people against the turbines did pretty good, actually. Their lawyer, it was a David and Goliath situation.
yeah.
And David actually did pretty good because the lawyer wouldn't make the judge wouldn't make a determination, and said, think about it a little bit more and get some more information and read some more about it before she made a determination. So as far as I know, at this meeting we're having now, they still haven't got an answer. But I'm not going to belabor it. You've heard me talk about what I used to see from Great Point when I was a ranger there, and that's 30 miles away. But I can say this, when you put it into perspective, Great Point Light is 72 or 73 feet high, and it's 5 miles away from Jetty's Beach. And if that's what you can see 5 miles away from the Jetty's Beach at 72 feet, you add another, I don't know, what is it, 15 miles or something, 11 more miles to get to 23 miles away. But you add it, it's 10 times as high as that or more. You can't tell me that you're not going to see the turbines. I don't buy it. Not to mention the lights and all the rest of it that's going with it. And they just, they're just charging ahead. And so what happened with Vineyard Wind, we were late to the party. And so we needed to take kind of what we got in $3 million. But I'm impressed with the lawyer that has joined Will Cook, Greg, I can't think of his last name, but he's very well spoken and he's right on it. And he let them know that we're not going to fold our wings and go away this time. And so he mentioned there are two ways, we can fight this. We can, do the litigation route, or we can play ball and, see what we can get from them. But that remains to be seen. And that's kind of where it is right now when they made the presentation to the select board on Wednesday.
You got it, Tom. Thank you. I wanted to bring up this. This is our wind farm work group, which Tom is a member of, representing this commission. You'll see the list of folks that are in this group. Myself and Lauren Sinatra are the staff liaisons for it. But you got all these different organizations, NPT, MMA. And this is a work group that doesn't have posted agendas, doesn't have posted meetings because of the sensitivity of it. We're a little unique in that regard. But because it's sensitive. But this is what this commission needs to realize on why Section 110F of the National Historic Preservation Act is very important. Because it's the cumulative effects of what this is going to be to our National Historic Landmark. This is unprecedented. This whole thing is unprecedented. And you will hear people, I think that the biggest thing to understand is our laws for the National Historic Preservation Act and any other laws don't prohibit development, However, it has to be, there has to be some balance in what the effects are. And section 110F is undue harm to the NHL. Well, again, this is unprecedented on A. B, we are having a visual effect with all of these wind farms. And what makes this really difficult is this is the federal waters that has been subdivided out, if you will, with the different developers, went through whole procurement processes with these states and those states and yada, yada. And so this is where you have, vineyard wind. Oh,
I think dark green.
yeah, they have this section here. They were divided in half. So there's a front part and the second part.
And then.
And they
They're
also
gonna
have
put
this.
up- They're gonna put up 149.
But then you have, this is Mayflower, and yes, they'll say, oh, we're only 23 miles away from Nantucket. We're not as close as Vineyard Wind. However, it's the cumulative effects. So the visualizations of during the review process for section 106, which Tom, you should have received a direct communication from Boehm. Let me know if you didn't get that.
Yeah.
They're coming up with their second review. The mitigation that they're proposing. Horrible. That's all I gotta say. And the biggest thing is making sure that, you know, it's not just, well, we're gonna say no. You can't just say no, because the federal government is pushing this, and they're pushing it on a quick time frame. So what does Nantucket get? A lot of people have had their opinions on our whole mitigation within that agreement with Vineyard Wind. If we didn't do that, we would have gotten nil. So I just want to stress to this commission and the public, for that matter, that you know, it's very important that we as, you know, a commission that's charged through the National Historic Preservation Act, that the process is followed, that Boehm follows the process for each individual development. And thank you for saying your praise for CHP. Greg and Will do a fantastic job. We have the best in the nation. Will was a former attorney for the National Historic Preservation, National Trust for Historic Preservation during the whole Cape Wind debacle in our sound. Yeah, I know you all probably remember that. I know I do. My grandfather was a big proponent for the birds, the migratory birds, and he wrote many, many, many letters. And thankfully, Nantucket Sound is a TCP, a traditional cultural property. Save Our Sound is still pushing for the Nantucket Sound to become a National Historic Landmark and have the same benefits as Nantucket. I don't know where that stands. The town of Nantucket has signed on to that request, along with other towns within the Sound. So of course, the federal government has the federal waters, and this is what they've done in, you know, for the wind farms. They're all individual.
What about the whales? Who's representing the whales here?
The
whales?
whales are a big thing. That's how they got it stopped up in Boston the other day.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we've got these right whales washing up on shore.
it's
right?
still
They say it's not
gonna
gonna.
happen. What Holly's saying is it's still gonna happen. And the whales have thrown them a curve for sure, but they'll come up with another 24 lawyers on whales. And
I mean, because after all, Tom, we have the whole local fishing industry
I know.
affected by seals.
right,
So how
Well,
come
they're-
whales?
they're talking about the fish on the sea floor. They're burying the wires under the sea floor. They generate a temperature of 165 degrees. And there's going to be
Oh,
hundreds of them. What Holly's saying is, or what I'm saying is, initially Vineyard Wind is supposedly going to put up, from the last BOEM forum that I had to attend, was 149, and they're going to be 859 feet. The Mayflower Wind is putting up 159, and they're going to be 1,166 feet. But that's a 308 windmills, turbines. But when this whole project is done, and that whole grid that Holly was showing you is completely done, if they get it to completion, we'll have 2,000 windmills. And
Well,
they're,
I can't
and they're
imagine.
one mile apart.
Have they
Who-
done studies in the UK to see how their sea flora has been affected by
Well,
their?
so that's something that I mentioned at the meeting. I mean, Finland and a few of these other places where they've got these are not the North Atlantic off of Nantucket. I don't think these people understand what Mother Nature is like here.
Yeah.
And so, well, you know, one of my questions was, what happens if they go bankrupt? What happens to all this infrastructure that they're putting out there if it doesn't work? Where are they going? Where's that going to go? And they had an answer for that. They says, "Oh, we're just going to take it down and we'll bring it ashore, and they'll redistribute."
Ship-
And so, I mean, it's like a matter of fact kind of stuff.
Well, I see that,
Thank
I
you for
see,
that update, Tom. As Holly brings up about the cumulative effect, I mean, there was a review and mitigation with the first phase. But as it's a cumulative effect of multiple wind farms, is that helping us or hurting us as far as mitigation?
Well, I brought up the fact
Blessings.
that I was on the Nantucket Historical Commission is part of this, and I'm their representative because we represent the preservation of all the historic stuff on Nantucket, as well as Nantucket stuff itself, since it's on the whole island is on the National Historic Register. And so our view of the South Coast has a lot to do with tourism. And that's one of our main stays. And so this lawyer that spoke up to the select board the other day, as well as the three people that were representing Mayflower Wind in my meeting, mentioned that he did the math and that we are going to lose, I think it was $816 million in tourism
revenue,
Economy. Yep.
revenue.
if they actually do wind up building these for 30 years. And so we're getting $3 million for that from Vineyard Wind.
Well, I just want to caution, you know, that this whole conversation right now, the consultation process for section 106 is strictly for Mayflower. Has nothing to do with Vineyard Wind. And
But
Vineyard
nothing,
Wind is
nothing to do with Vineyard Wind, that's correct.
right, and Vineyard Wind is the only one that's received the approval from the Secretary of Interior to construct. And that's the one that is now being litigated by ACRATS. So what's important to understand is the fact that we have multiple developers on that map, multiple development phases, and they're in different planning.
So
and
they're all
permitting.
coming. That
Yeah.
one's just the furthest ahead.
Correct, but to end it with that the federal government is pushing this as quickly as possible. So again, that's why I've praised the
Yeah,
fact
but
that the town is.
that could change in 2024. I mean, if we have a switch in the leadership, I would imagine that would be deprioritized pretty quickly.
And
Well,
it's
the
all,
fact
yes,
that Nantucket is liable to lose revenue as a result of all of
Yep.
these being there,
Yep.
whether whose company it is that's putting them up, is
Yep.
it's gonna cost us, and who knows what it will do.
That should get the Chamber of Commerce on board.
so the chamber they were the ones that were supposed to have it instead of having it in here when Mayflower came. We, the town, have been pushing Mayflower to come to Nantucket, engage the public. You need to do this, not just once. So we've have them on record to say they'll be back. And we were supposed to have it at the chamber. Chamber is really wanting to be a Switzerland. They don't want to go on either side of the coin. I get it, there's politics involved. Quite frankly, what this commission could possibly help with would be to the State Historic Preservation Office, MHC. Because throughout the past consultations, I have not seen our State Historic Preservation Office really and truly be involved. I think with the prior governor, I think he was more or less telling them, we want to support this. So, that's just my personal take on it. I have reached out to MHC to find out who, because the previous contact for section 106 for the wind farms, was somebody that both myself and Lauren have met. He no longer works for the state. So I asked Jen Doherty, can you let me know? So I actually got to email her back and ask, because she was going to look into that for me, because it's important for us to know who's at the best interest of Nantucket. It's the tribes, or the tribes have been instrumental in some of these consultation processes. But I wanted to just mention that, it's important to realize that it's in multiple different processes and multiple different phases. And yeah, some of it might be done before the 2024 election, some of it may not. But I think it's important us to make sure that we are clear that the cumulative effects on the National Historic Preservation Act is what we.
Well, no,
need to
I'm
be-
just saying if we delay it enough and then that happens,
Yep.
then at least that gives you some bit of reprieve.
And our expert council,
And I'm sure the lawyers are telling you the same thing.
I mean, we have the best, is what I'm gonna say. And we're very fortunate, and I thank the select board to make sure that they are still engaged, because when the first one came around and Lauren and I are going, oh my gosh, and I'm showing her the federal law, and I'm going, what's going on here? Even for me to sit here and represent NPDC as the consulting party for them was very difficult for BOEM, the federal agency who's supposed to regulate all this, to even acknowledge that more than one of Nantucket people to be involved with the consultation. So that's why I'm very adamant on making sure that each developer knows who represents this commission, the HDC, and all the other entities when we go through the section 106 process for all those developers.
So I heard that at our meeting that the government was not happy with the head of BOEM, and so they fired him and hired a new guy because BOEM wasn't moving fast enough. And the other thing, something else I wanted to mention, can't remember what it was, but like Holly says, we've got to come up with the best case scenario that we can be. Oh, I know what it was. Mayflower made the statement that they are scheduled, as far as they're concerned, to start breaking ground, if you will, in 2026.
Well, I'm hearing, those advertisements on the radio, providing electric in 2023 from the wind farm. But one thing that when we're looking at that map of what's been sold and developed or is to be developed, it shows, if you looked at the farthest wind turbines, that okay, those are legitimate sites where construction can happen. Why couldn't that be the first row instead of the last one? Has there been any discussion about moving them further away from view?
The lawyer that we have, that Holly is talking about, are asking Mayflower Wind why they can't push the starting line further out so that we don't see them, but that's still brand new.
Yeah,
I still don't understand why the whales aren't better protected.
Yeah,
I don't.
I know.
Where are the natural history people on this?
Well, it's
Well,
the fast moving boats and the fishing nets and, the things that are killing the whales.
I brought up the subject that with these things at 1,166 feet tall, the Empire State Building is 1,250 feet tall. That's only 180 feet taller, 184 feet taller than these things are. And you get some hotshot coming from New York on a Friday night with his girlfriend, similar to a JFK guy, where the ceiling is starting to come down. He's going to be flying dangerously close because 23 miles out in an airplane is nothing. That's where you call for permission to land. And it's, just asking for permission.
actually, that's a really good point because, Tom, most of the flights, the planes that come into Nantucket, the highest they go is 2,000 feet. So if you're at that height, it's gonna be blocking wide swaths of our flight path into Nantucket
Right,
because of where they are.
yeah, so who?
But
who's
I brought
representing
up
the
all
airport?
those subjects, the whales, the navigation for air traffic, the navigation just for the boats. And
Why don't you get the FAA involved?
who knows, I mean, the
Local-
seaboards, a
local-
lot of stuff.
Private plane owners.
On that note of the FAA, Clifford Williams, who works for the FAA on Nantucket, was at the select board and actually told the select board, they haven't reached out to them at all.
So that's a good idea, Tom, that maybe someone should reach out to someone from the FAA.
The FAA is a federal agency though, so if the government
Correct.
wants this to happen, the FAA is going to make it
Correct.
happen. But
They're-
maybe
they're in
some,
cahoots with, they're in the back seat of Boehm's car.
yeah, but you know, we have a lot of
Well,
private plane.
but yeah,
operators here.
maybe
We have a lot of
private.
Private plane
We do.
operators
We
who
brought that
have a
to
lot of
them
influence.
About the flight patterns, that we have a lot.
Who are
more
not gonna be
private
happy
than-
if they're
than-
gonna, if their whole, this whole quadrant of their approach to Nantucket is gonna be
Apparently they-
unsafe.
Yeah, but apparently they got all that data. That's my
Do these
understanding.
people know? I mean, we barely even know. Do they
Right.
know?
But we've been
Just
told
more
about it
more
for-
publicity.
You guys, we've kind of reached the end of our meeting.
I just wanted to, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, I just wanted to bring up the shipwreck. So you all heard about the shipwreck. You all probably saw the articles too.
Dying to hear about it.
So at the end of the day, what you saw in your packet was the press release from Egan Maritime. Where my understanding is we're still waiting for David Robinson, who is the archaeologist who I got to meet, great guy, talked to him on the phone. He is finalizing his report, which we should be able to see. But the biggest thing is both Egan Maritime and the state would like to use the shipwreck as a educational component. And so, obviously the town would want to, they included us in that, and I think, this commission would be something that to benefit that. So when I get more information, when I get the report, when I find out what David is wanting to propose, he's a big advocate on education. So, it was actually great to meet him and know that we have a state archaeologist for the underwater cultural aspect of things, but also, which balances out with MHC, two archaeologists that do the same thing. So, I'll let you know when I find out more, but, pretty cool. Pretty
So
great. They've
cool.
been
I
finding
got to
more.
see it last weekend. It was amazing. I felt like I was going back in time to be there in front of something that,
Yeah.
wrecked in 1884 or whatever, but how old was that ship? When it crashed.
Mhm.
But to just see the joinery and how everything was put together, it was just stunning.
Well, it's amazing that the amount of information that's available, they can actually pinpoint to the shipyard of where that was built.
Wow.
So the information that we'll be able to get is pretty incredible.
Thank you for keeping us updated. Tom,
I move we adjourn.
Perfect.
you have a second?
Second,
All in favor, Mickey?
Aye.
Abby?
Hi.
Georgia?
aye.
I think we lost Clement. We had her for a minute. Wait, do we have everybody?
Your best, Tom.
Tom, on your motion.
Aye.
Okay. I as well. Thank you all and
Well, later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
catch up soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.